Good morning, Royal. I'm Jonah White.
And I'm Ashley Dahl, and this is your Royal 3 News.
Our top story for this week, that a man described in his 20s as 5 feet 5 inches tall showed a handgun at a Quiznos. A Quiznos. Along Cochrane on Thursday night. Anyone with any information is asked to contact the police. Quiznos.
On Campus News, senior dinner is on Wednesday. Tickets are $5 in ASB. No tickets will be sold at the door. Yearbooks are also on sale now in the ASB office for $80 with ASB and $90 without, so buy them before the cost goes up.
I sure would buy them now. In sports, the varsity football team clashed with Moorpark last Friday for the 2011 homecoming game. The Highlanders came out short 21-35. On a positive note, Royal came out swinging in the second half. On Monday, girls volleyball squared off with our crosstown rival in enemy territory. Boys water polo played Moorpark on Wednesday. Thursday, JV varsity volleyball played TO. Water polo was at Calabasas, and freshman football played Moorpark.
In entertainment, new movie Tower Heist, starring Eddie Murphy and Ben Stiller, will be opening this weekend. Also, new movie Puss in Boots set a Halloween weekend record for a domestic opening with $51 million.
Now we go to Brian Peebles with the weather.
Thank you, Jonah. So, as you can see, weathers this week will range from the mid-70s to low 80s, with showers possibly Friday and Saturday. So remember to keep warm, Royal. Back to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Brian. And now we have our Meet the Faculty interview.
Hello, Highlanders. Brian Peebles here, and today I've got a very special interview with Mr. Kiunke, one of our newest teachers to the campus. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good, Brian, really good. I'm excited about the interview. Great questions.
All right, so as everyone's been talking about recently, you know, we've got this massive economic drop. Some say it's going to be worse than the Great Depression. So, what economic reform do you think that the government and Federal Reserves at this point need to take in order to bring our economy back around?
Well, that's a really good question, Brian, and it's a good question for all of us to be grappling with right now, because you are correct, America is in dire straits, if you will, economically. And there are many ways, I think, that we as a nation can go about tackling this problem, and really, pardon the expression here, Brian, but we only need to look at our own history to see ways we can figure these problems out, and I'll give you an example. During the Great Depression, one of the number one problems is there's a lack of government regulation of the finance industry. Ergo, what led us to this problem right now? A lack of regulation in the mortgage and finance industry. So one of the things we can do is learn to manage and regulate things more efficiently. You know, we don't need to just dictate what business does, but the other thing we can learn from the Great Depression is Keynesian economics, which is priming the pump. So you give some jobs to the people, to us, and to get more money into the economy and the government. One way I would do that is by having a rail system. How about building a national rail system, putting people back to work, and then saying the only companies that will have contracts on this new rail system will be American companies. Then we can employ Americans, make American goods, and maybe start getting ourselves back on track. Also, in closing, you sure as heck don't tax students and raise tuition by 20 or 30% and expect to get out. What we do is we fuel our youth and our education system to help propel us out of this economic crisis, if you will.
Right. As I recall, trains have a 10 times more efficiency fuel per ounce than cars.
Well, what I think would be great about that, Brian, is that we could unleash the potential of the nation. And if you look back through American history, it was the great Iron Horse that brought that manifest destiny out west.
Right.
It was that Union Central Pacific meeting in Utah that got that transcontinental railroad. And it's those kinds of things that sparked Carnegie's interest in more steel, Rockefeller's interest. And if we get back to transporting goods and our people, we can make our country better,
right,
and employ Americans. That's not a panacea. That's not going to be the end-all solution, but it's step one. And we have to take baby steps and start having accountability from people up at the top of the business world and not let them tell us what to do. We need to be telling our representatives what we want to do.
Exactly. So next up, as you remember, I'm sure, Obama at some point promised to withdraw troops from Iraq and Afghanistan,
Indeed.
to which he has not. So many of the questions, people, is should we still have soldiers over in the Middle Eastern areas on peacekeeping business, as it's said?
Well, I will say, Brian, that I do think Mr. Obama has come through with his initial promise of moving troops from Iraq. I will say that does leave us in an interesting quagmire in that region of the world, because there is the Shia in the north in Iraq and the Sunni in Saudi Arabia in south. And that power vacuum does concern individuals, as it should. But he is bringing troops out of there, and it's long deserved. I mean, it really pains me to say we've been there for a decade, but there are a lot of brave young Americans that have sacrificed quite a bit over there. So I'm happy they're coming home. As far as the Middle East in general, Brian, I definitely think we should keep a vigilant eye on our world, especially the Middle East. But I think what we should do is listen from experience. If we listen to General Colin C. Powell, and we learn about his Powell doctrine to global interventions, I think that might be a place that we start, so we won't find ourselves a decade after we first got involved having discussions like this. We might find ourselves 2 or 3 years after an involvement somewhere saying, hey, I'm glad we followed General Powell's advice. But as far as peacekeeping troops all over the world, it's part of what we do as this great country, America. After World War II, I'm sure you know that national security became paramount.
Well, that's all for this week, Royal.
See you next time.
Now we go to Brian Peebles with the weather.
And here's our Meet the Faculty interview.
Now, let's take a look at some footage of the homecoming rally.